Personal tragedy evolved into a powerful movement demanding change. The father, once a man home, his voice grew stronger, resonating with people far beyond his community. Every public appearance, interview, and speech was delivered with unwavering conviction. He spoke not just as a military veteran, but as a father who had witnessed firsthand the devastating consequences of racial prejudice and abuse of power. His story put a human face on statistics and headlines, reminding audiences of the real lives impacted. Support poured in from activists, civil rights groups, and ordinary citizens. Social media campaigns amplified their message, reaching millions across the country. Hashtags trending daily called for reforms, justice, and accountability. Protests organized peacefully in cities, echoing chants for equality and respect. Amidst the growing momentum, local leaders began to listen. Community forums invited dialogue between police officials and residents, breaking down barriers of mistrust. Training programs were revamped to include anti-bias education and crisis intervention techniques. Some officers embraced the changes, eager to restore faith in their role as protectors rather than threats. The father became a mentor to other families caught in similar struggles. His experience provided guidance and hope, showing that collective action could lead to tangible progress. Workshops and seminars he led empowered people to understand their rights and navigate the legal system more effectively. Yet the path was far from smooth. Resistance came from entrenched interests and skeptics unwilling to accept the need for reform. Some dismissed the movement as divisive or exaggerated, while others attempted to discredit the family's story. Threats and intimidation tactics surfaced, underscoring the high stakes involved. Despite these challenges, the family remained resolute. Their unity and faith in justice sustained them through dark times. The daughter, slowly reclaiming her voice, began sharing her journey to help others heal. Her honesty and bravery inspired many facing trauma in silence. In parallel, research and policy analysis highlighted the urgency of addressing systemic issues within law enforcement. Data-driven approaches identified patterns of misconduct, racial profiling, and excessive force. Experts recommended sweeping changes from recruitment to community engagement strategies. Legislators took note, drafting bills to improve transparency and oversight. Proposals included mandatory body cameras, independent review boards, and stricter penalties for misconduct. Funding was allocated for community-based programs aimed at violence prevention and mental health support. The case also sparked broader discussions about race, privilege, and justice in America. Media outlets hosted roundtables with scholars, activists, and policymakers dissecting the roots of inequality. Educational institutions incorporated these topics into curricula, encouraging critical reflection among students. The family's experience underscored the importance of allyship and solidarity. People from diverse backgrounds united in a shared vision for a fairer society. Grassroots organizations flourished, building networks of support and advocacy. In their own lives, the father and daughter found strength in each other. The journey toward healing was ongoing, marked by small victories and setbacks. Therapy, community involvement, and spiritual practices helped them rebuild trust and resilience. The father's military discipline now complemented his activism, blending strategic thinking with heartfelt compassion. His leadership inspired a new generation to stand up against injustice, armed not with weapons, but with knowledge and empathy. As the movement gained traction, tangible changes began to take shape. Police departments adopted new policies, reducing incidents of violence and improving community relations. Crime rates in some areas dropped as programs focused on prevention and rehabilitation replaced punitive approaches. The family story remained a touchstone, a reminder that change is possible when courage meets commitment. It highlighted the power of one voice to ignite a chorus calling for justice. Though the scars of that day would never fully fade, they transformed pain into purpose. Their legacy was not just survival, but the spark that helped light a path toward equality and respect for all. When the news broke, few outside the family knew the full story of the father. To the public, he was a grieving parent, a man devastated by the violence inflicted on his daughter. But beneath that public image lay a past that few could have imagined, a life shaped by secrecy, danger, and extraordinary skill. A life in which every decision carried the weight of survival, every mission was a test of nerve, and every moment demanded perfection. The father was no ordinary man. For over 2 decades, he had served in one of the most elite units of the U.S. military, the Delta Force. His expertise was forged in the crucible of global conflicts, clandestine operations, and high-stakes counter-terrorism missions. Few could claim to have walked in his boots, and even fewer understood what it meant to carry such a burden while also raising a family in a world far removed from the battlefield. The revelations about his military career added a new layer of complexity to the story. Media outlets quickly began digging into his past, unearthing details about covert missions in volatile regions, his role in rescuing hostages, and his proficiency with a range of advanced weapons and tactics. Interviews with former colleagues painted a picture of a man who was disciplined, intelligent, and fiercely protective of those he cared about. Yet none of this background had prepared him for what happened that night. His lethal skills, honed for combat, were rendered irrelevant by the cold realities of racial bias and police violence on American soil. The officers who shot his daughter had no idea who they were dealing with. They saw only the color of her skin, a stereotype shaped by decades of systemic prejudice. In the days following the shooting, the father's resolve hardened. With the calm precision of a military strategist, he began to plan. He reached out to legal experts, civil rights organizations, and media advisors. Every move was calculated to ensure that justice would be pursued vigorously and publicly. There would be no quiet settlements, no closed-door agreements. This was a battle that demanded transparency and accountability. The family's legal team quickly filed a civil rights lawsuit against the police department and the individual officers involved. The case was expected to be long and arduous, with high stakes for all parties. Beyond monetary damages, it was about forcing a national conversation on police reform, racial profiling, and the culture of impunity within law enforcement. At the same time, the father's military background became a focal point of public discourse. Some saw it as a symbol of resilience, a narrative of a veteran standing up for his family and community. Others viewed it with skepticism, questioning whether his past would influence the proceedings or public perception. Regardless, it was undeniable that his story added gravity and urgency to the issue. Behind the headlines, however, was a man grappling with profound grief. The trauma of seeing his daughter hurt, unarmed and vulnerable, was a wound that no training or experience could heal. Late nights were spent reliving the events, seeking answers that were not easy to find. He became an advocate, a voice for those who had suffered similar fates, and a pillar of strength for his family. The community rallied around them. Vigils were held, petitions circulated, and protests organized. The story became emblematic of larger systemic problems that many had long fought to expose. It sparked renewed calls for police accountability, changes in training protocols, and greater oversight. Meanwhile, the police department found itself under intense scrutiny. Internal investigations were launched, and the officers involved were placed on administrative leave. Public trust, already fragile, eroded further as more details emerged about the use of excessive force and questionable decision-making. Throughout this tumultuous time, the father remained steadfast. His military discipline was now focused on a different mission: to seek justice through the courts, media, and public opinion. He understood that this was a battle not just for his daughter, but for countless families affected by similar tragedies. His story also highlighted an uncomfortable truth about American society: that valor and service in one arena did not always translate to protection and respect in another. A decorated veteran trained to save lives and neutralize threats was powerless to prevent his own child from becoming a victim of systemic racism. As the case moved forward, it attracted the attention of civil rights leaders, politicians, and activists. It became a catalyst for renewed debate on the role of race in law enforcement and the urgent need for reform. The father's voice, once private, became a beacon of courage and determination. The unfolding legal battle promised to challenge entrenched systems and force change. Yet amid the high-profile media coverage and public outcry, the family's personal journey remained deeply human, filled with pain, hope, and the relentless pursuit of justice. In today's digital age, a single moment captured on video can ignite a firestorm of public outrage, demand accountability, and reshape the course of justice. For the family of the man whose daughter was shot, it was a viral video that brought their painful story from private grief to national spotlight. The footage was raw and unfiltered. Shot by a bystander with a smartphone, it showed the tense moments leading up to the shooting. The video revealed the daughter, unarmed and visibly distressed, as she was confronted by police officers. Voices were raised, commands shouted, and within seconds, chaos erupted. The video captured the moment when the officers opened fire, the shock and confusion that followed, and the immediate aftermath. What made the video so powerful was its undeniable clarity. There was no ambiguous angle, no distorted lens to obscure the truth. The footage directly contradicted early police reports that had painted the incident as a justified use of force. Instead, viewers saw a young woman struggling to comply, showing no signs of aggression or threat. Once uploaded, the video spread like wildfire. Social media platforms lit up with shares, comments, and calls for justice. Hashtags demanding accountability trended worldwide. Influencers, celebrities, and civil rights activists voiced their support, amplifying the story beyond local headlines. The viral video became a rallying point for those demanding reform. It galvanized protests in multiple cities, led to vigils at the site of the shooting, and pressured political leaders to respond. News outlets dissected every second of the footage, conducting expert analyses that questioned the officers' actions and highlighted systemic flaws. For the family, the video was both a blessing and a burden. On one hand, it brought attention to their cause, increasing pressure on authorities to act. It ensured the shooting wouldn't be swept under the rug, and the public could no longer ignore the truth. On the other hand, it meant reliving the trauma repeatedly, as images of the incident circulated endlessly. The father watched the video countless times, each viewing a painful reminder of what had happened. Despite his military training and steely resolve, the raw emotion was impossible to suppress. The image of his daughter in distress haunted his thoughts, fueling his determination to seek justice. Legal experts quickly weighed in on the significance of the video evidence. In court, such footage could be pivotal, undermining the defense's claims and bolstering the prosecution's case. The video was shared with investigators, lawyers, and watchdog groups, becoming a cornerstone of the legal battle. The police department faced intense scrutiny. Public trust plummeted as questions mounted about the officers' conduct, training, and decision-making protocols. Calls for independent investigations grew louder, with demands for transparency and accountability. The viral video also sparked national debates about the role of technology in policing and justice. Some argued that citizen recordings were crucial for exposing wrongdoing and empowering communities. Others raised concerns about privacy, misinformation, and the potential for videos to be manipulated. Yet, for many, the undeniable power of the footage was clear. It humanized the victim, exposed systemic issues, and gave voice to those who had long been silenced. The video became a symbol of resistance, a tool for advocacy, and a catalyst for change. Behind the headlines, the family grappled with the impact of their story going viral. The father faced a new challenge, navigating the glare of public attention while protecting his family's privacy and dignity. Media interviews, public appearances, and social media engagement became part of their daily reality. The daughter's recovery journey was also documented and shared with permission, highlighting the physical and emotional toll of the shooting. The family emphasized the importance of healing, community support, and resilience in the face of adversity. Meanwhile, the viral video continued to fuel activism and legislative efforts. Lawmakers introduced bills aimed at increasing police accountability, improving training, and addressing racial bias. Grassroots organizations mobilized volunteers, organized workshops, and pushed for systemic reforms. The father, leveraging his military background and newfound public platform, became a powerful advocate. He spoke at rallies, testified before committees, and engaged with policymakers. His message was clear. Justice was not only about punishment, but about changing a broken system. As the case moved toward trial, the viral video remained a central element. Its impact extended beyond the courtroom, influencing public opinion, media narratives, and cultural conversations. It was a stark reminder that in the age of smartphones and social media, truth could no longer be hidden behind official reports or silence. The shooting and its aftermath illustrated a broader societal struggle, the clash between institutional power and citizen oversight, the fight for racial justice and the quest for dignity and respect. The viral video was not just evidence. It was a testament to the courage of those willing to confront injustice. As viewers around the world watched, shared, and debated the footage, the story of the father and his daughter became part of a larger movement. Their pain, became a rallying cry, their fight a beacon of hope. And yet the full story was far from over. The trial would bring new revelations, challenges, and moments that could redefine the nation's approach to policing and civil rights. The viral video had opened the now it was time to walk through it. The moment the trial began, it felt like the entire nation was watching. The courtroom was packed, tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Family members, activists, journalists, and curious onlookers filled every seat, all eager to see justice take its course. This was not just a case about one shooting. It was a trial that symbolized the deep, unresolved wounds in the country's fabric. The defense team came prepared. Their strategy was clear: paint the officers as acting under extreme stress, following procedure and responding to a perceived threat. They aimed to justify the shooting as a tragic but necessary action, but they were facing overwhelming evidence. The viral video, eyewitness testimonies, forensic reports, and most importantly, the presence of the victim's father, a man whose story was unlike any other. The prosecution opened with a compelling narrative. They described the incident as a grave misuse of power and a failure to uphold the principles of justice and human dignity. They emphasized that the daughter was unarmed, frightened, and posed no immediate danger. The video was played in court, every frame dissected to reveal the undeniable truth. Witness after witness took the stand. Neighbors who saw the events unfold, emergency responders who treated the victim, and experts who analyzed the police's actions. Each testimony chipped away at the defense's narrative. The video, once a viral sensation, became a crucial piece of evidence in the hands of skilled attorneys. The father's testimony was one of the most anticipated moments. Despite the pain, he spoke with calm authority. He recounted the moments before the shooting, his family's life before tragedy, and the aftermath that changed everything. He did not just speak as a grieving parent, but as a man dedicated to justice, accountability, and reform. His military background came into focus. The prosecution revealed his service as a Delta Force commander, a lethal operator with years of experience in high-stress combat situations. This added a new dimension to the story. The victim's father was no stranger to danger or violence, yet the officers failed to recognize the gravity of their actions. Cross-examination was intense. The defense probed the father's motives, trying to paint him as biased or emotionally compromised. But the strength of his testimony, backed by evidence and community support, made it clear that his fight was just and grounded in truth. As the trial progressed, tensions ran high outside the courtroom as well. Protests continued, calls for police reform grew louder, and the public remained deeply engaged. Social media was abuzz with live updates, analysis, and heartfelt discussions. The viral video's impact persisted, fueling a movement that demanded systemic change. Inside the courtroom, expert witnesses provided technical insights. Police procedures were scrutinized. The training officers received, the decision-making process in high-pressure moments, and the protocols for use of force were all examined in painstaking detail. The prosecution argued that the officers had alternatives, de-escalation techniques, non-lethal options, communication, all of which were ignored or poorly executed. They highlighted discrepancies in the officers' reports, inconsistencies that raised questions about credibility and accountability. The defense countered with arguments about split-second decisions and the challenges of law enforcement. They stressed the unpredictability of the situation and the need for officers to protect themselves. However, these arguments struggled against the weight of visual evidence and witness accounts. Throughout the trial, the judge maintained strict order. Every piece of evidence was carefully considered, every statement weighed. The media coverage ensured transparency, but also added pressure on everyone involved. Family members of the victim remained a powerful presence. Their pain and resilience humanized the case, reminding everyone that this was not just a legal battle, but a deeply personal tragedy. Community leaders and activists testified about the broader context: racial profiling, police brutality, and the urgent need for reform. Their voices linked the incident to a larger pattern of systemic injustice. As closing arguments approached, emotions were high. The prosecution implored the jury to see beyond technicalities and recognize the human cost. The defense urged understanding of the complexities officers face in the field. The jury's deliberation would not be easy. They had to weigh conflicting narratives, complex evidence, and the moral implications of their decision. Their verdict would resonate far beyond the courtroom walls. The trial was a microcosm of a nation grappling with its history and future. It was a test of justice, truth, and the collective conscience. As the jury filed back in with their decision, the world held its breath. The jury sat in the courtroom, silent and tense, as the judge called the room to order. Every eye was fixed on them, every heartbeat echoed in the hushed air. The moment of truth had arrived. The verdict in the case that had gripped a nation. As the jury foreperson stood to deliver the decision, the weight of months of testimonies, evidence, and emotions pressed down on everyone present. The foreperson's voice was steady, but filled with the gravity of the moment. The verdict would not only decide the fate of the officers involved, but would send ripples through communities far beyond that courtroom. When the words finally came, they set off a wave of reactions: shock, relief, outrage, hope, a kaleidoscope of human emotion. Depending on the verdict, there was a potential for healing or further division. This was more than a legal ruling, it was a cultural milestone. News outlets flooded the airwaves, and social media platforms exploded with commentary and opinions. The video that had once been a raw, unfiltered moment of crisis now became a symbol, a rallying cry for those demanding accountability and reform. The father, still dignified and composed, stood as a beacon of resilience amidst the storm. The verdict, whatever it was, did not end the conversation. Instead, it ignited new discussions about policing, racial injustice, and the role of the military in civilian life. For many, it underscored the urgent need to rethink law enforcement practices, training, and oversight. Community leaders mobilized, organizing forums and town halls to address the underlying issues the case had exposed. They spoke about systemic bias, the importance of empathy in policing, and the need for community-based approaches to safety. The victim's family, though bruised by grief, became voices of change. They pushed for legislation, better police training, and transparency. Their story was no longer just a personal tragedy. It had become a catalyst for societal transformation. On the other side, some groups defended law enforcement, emphasizing the dangers officers face daily and the split-second decisions they must make. This divide highlighted the complexity of the issue, balancing safety, justice, and civil rights. The involvement of a Delta Force commander as the father added layers to the narrative. His military background brought attention to how veterans engage with civilian justice systems and the unique perspectives they offer on discipline, responsibility, and honor. The broader public, too, was forced to confront uncomfortable truths. Videos of police encounters had become a powerful tool for accountability, yet also revealed painful patterns of racial profiling and violence. This case was a stark reminder that technology can both expose injustice and deepen societal wounds. Amid the outrage and activism, there were also moments of unity. People from diverse backgrounds came together to demand change. Workshops on bias training, crisis intervention, and community policing gained momentum. The government responded with promises of reform, but critics demanded action, not just words. Calls for independent oversight, body cameras, and better mental health resources for officers grew louder. The trial and verdict also sparked conversations about the role of media in shaping public perception. How viral videos influence justice, the balance between sensationalism and facts, and the power of storytelling in advocacy were all debated. For the victim's family, the journey was far from over. Healing from loss, navigating public scrutiny, and channeling pain into purpose was a daily challenge. Their courage inspired many to keep fighting. At its core, this case was about more than one incident. It was about the ongoing struggle for equality, respect, and justice in a complex society. It showed that real change requires not only legal decisions but cultural shifts. As the dust settled, the question remained: what would come next? Would this verdict be a turning point, or just another chapter in a long story? The answers were not easy, but the hope for progress endured. Behind every headline and viral video lies a story rarely told in full: the man behind the tragedy. The black man whose daughter was shot by police was no ordinary citizen. He was a lethal Delta Force commander, a highly trained elite soldier, with years of experience operating in some of the most dangerous environments in the world. His life was a tapestry woven with discipline, sacrifice, and secrets. This part of the story introduces a striking contrast: the public persona of a grieving father confronting a brutal injustice, and the shadowy figure of a military operative, trained for war and survival. His journey into the military had begun decades ago, driven by a desire to serve his country and protect those who could not protect themselves. Early on, he demonstrated a rare blend of mental toughness, physical prowess, and strategic thinking. These qualities propelled him into the ranks of the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, better known as Delta Force, the United States' most elite counter-terrorism unit. Delta Force soldiers operate in silence and secrecy. Their missions often involve high-risk hostage rescues, direct action raids, and covert operations against terrorist threats. Few outside the unit ever learn their names, and fewer still hear their stories. The man at the center of this case was no exception. His training was grueling. It tested every fiber of his being: endurance, marksmanship, tactical decision-making, and psychological resilience. He learned how to think fast, move stealthily, and strike with precision. In war zones across the globe, he faced life-or-death scenarios that would shape his worldview and sharpen his instincts. Despite the demands of military life, he remained deeply connected to his family. His daughter was his pride and joy, and he worked hard to shield her from the harsh realities of his profession. He hoped to provide her with a life far removed from the violence and danger that defined his own. Yet fate had other plans. The shooting incident, a moment of chaos and misunderstanding, thrust the private soldier back into a battlefield he never anticipated, his own community. The revelation of his Delta Force status sent shockwaves through the media and public discourse. Many were intrigued by the stark irony. A man trained to handle hostile engagements with lethal force was powerless to prevent the trauma inflicted on his family by those sworn to protect. His military background added a complex layer to the legal proceedings. Defense attorneys debated whether his combat experience might influence his reactions, portraying him as a potential threat. Meanwhile, advocates highlighted how the military had prepared him to respond with discipline, not aggression, emphasizing his role as a protector rather than a provocateur. The commander himself maintained a calm, measured demeanor throughout the trial. His military discipline shone through in his testimony, clear, concise, and unwavering. He refused to be painted as a vigilante or an instigator, instead demanding accountability for the officers who acted recklessly. Off the record, his story inspired many veterans and active service members. They saw in him a reflection of their own struggles, balancing duty, family, and the fight for justice. Support groups rallied around his family, providing emotional and legal assistance. His story also sparked debates within military circles about the transition from combat zones to civilian life. How do elite soldiers reintegrate into societies where the rules are different and the threats less tangible but no less real? His experience underscored the challenges veterans face, including mistrust, trauma, and the need for understanding from the broader community. As news outlets dug deeper, they uncovered other facets of his life: charitable work with veteran organizations, mentoring at-risk youth, and advocacy for better policing standards. These efforts painted a picture of a man committed to service in every sense, yet despite the public interest, he remained focused on one goal: seeking justice for his daughter and ensuring no other family suffers as his did. His Delta Force past was not a weapon, but a testament to his character, resilience, integrity, and a refusal to back down in the face of adversity. This chapter of the story served as a powerful reminder that beneath every headline is a human being with a complex past and a profound desire for fairness. The father's military legacy was not just about combat, it was about fighting for what is right, both on the battlefield and in the courtroom. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as the trial for the officers involved in the shooting of the black man's daughter finally commenced. What had started as a viral video and a national outcry had transformed into a complex legal battle, watched closely by millions across the country. The stakes were enormous. For the family, it was about seeking justice for an innocent young woman whose life was irrevocably altered by a single tragic moment. For the police department, it was a fight to defend their officers and preserve the institution's reputation amid growing calls for police reform. The courtroom was a charged atmosphere where emotions ran high, but decorum was strictly maintained. From the outset, the presiding judge made it clear that the trial would be conducted with fairness and impartiality, despite the public pressure outside. Opening statements set the tone for the intense battle ahead. The prosecution painted a vivid picture of reckless police behavior, emphasizing the racial undertones and lack of justification for the use of deadly force. They argued that the officers acted out of bias and fear, ignoring protocols designed to protect civilians. The defense countered by framing the officers' actions as split-second decisions made under extreme pressure. They highlighted the chaotic scene, claiming the daughter's behavior had appeared threatening to the officers. They also sought to introduce the father's military background as a factor that complicated the situation, suggesting that his family might have been perceived as dangerous. Witness testimonies became the heart of the trial. The viral video was presented multiple times, each viewing dissected frame by frame by expert analysts. Video experts testified about angles, timing, and what could or could not be seen, while use of force specialists debated whether the police response was appropriate. Emotional testimonies from family members and friends added a human dimension, often lost in legal jargon. The father's testimony was particularly powerful. A man disciplined by years of elite military service who spoke with quiet dignity about the pain of losing his daughter's sense of safety and innocence. Surveillance. Footage from nearby businesses, bodycam videos, and radio communications were scrutinized. Contradictions emerged between officers' statements and the recorded evidence, sparking fierce cross-examinations. The racial aspect of the case permeated every discussion. Civil rights activists and legal experts weighed in on systemic issues that might have influenced the officers' behavior. The trial became a microcosm of the larger national debate on race, policing, and justice. Legal strategies evolved as new evidence surfaced. The prosecution worked to undermine claims of self-defense, bringing in forensic experts to analyze ballistics and trajectories. The defense sought to question the credibility of witnesses and introduce psychological assessments of the officers' stress levels. Outside the courtroom, protests continued, with supporters rallying for a guilty verdict. The trial was live-streamed and dissected on social media, creating a parallel public trial that sometimes influenced perceptions and added pressure to all parties involved. Legal analysts debated possible outcomes, from convictions on charges of excessive force and manslaughter to potential acquittals based on the ambiguity of the officer's intent. The jury's composition and backgrounds became subjects of intense speculation, as each juror's perspective might tip the scales. Throughout the trial, the family maintained a presence, dignified, determined, and hopeful. Their pain was palpable, but channeled into calls for accountability and reform. The father's military comrades sent letters of support, reinforcing his reputation as a man of principle and honor. The trial also exposed gaps in police training and policy. Experts testified about the need for de-escalation techniques, cultural sensitivity training, and stricter oversight of use of force incidents. The case became a catalyst for discussions within law enforcement agencies nationwide. As the trial progressed, moments of tension and breakthrough punctuated the proceedings. Unexpected admissions, emotional outbursts, and the defense's attempts to shift blame kept the narrative gripping. The jurors were tasked with navigating not only the facts, but also the emotional weight of a case that symbolized larger societal fractures. Ultimately, this chapter of the story showed the difficult path to justice when institutions, communities, and individual lives collide. It underscored the challenges of holding law enforcement accountable in a system rife with complexity and nuance. The trial was far from over, and the outcome remained uncertain. But one thing was clear. This case had ignited a conversation that could reshape the future of policing and justice in America. The courtroom was now a battlefield of words and wills. Both prosecution and defense knew that the verdict would ripple far beyond the walls of the courthouse. With millions watching, every statement mattered, every piece of evidence could sway the jury, and every moment carried the weight of a nation's expectations. The prosecution began to sharpen its focus. Their strategy was clear: to dismantle the defense's narrative by meticulously exposing contradictions and emphasizing the officers' failure to follow protocol. They called on expert witnesses, former law enforcement officers turned whistleblowers, forensic analysts and psychologists, to paint a vivid picture of the flawed decision-making that led to the shooting. One prosecutor spoke passionately about systemic racism, highlighting patterns of disproportionate force used against black communities. She argued that this case was not an isolated incident, but part of a larger troubling pattern. This line of argument aimed to make the jury see beyond the immediate facts and grasp the deeper implications of the officers' actions. Meanwhile, the defense worked to humanize the accused officers. Their approach was to evoke sympathy, presenting the officers as individuals caught in a volatile, unpredictable situation. They brought in character witnesses, family members, fellow officers and friends who attested to their dedication and professionalism. The defense also sought to question the credibility of the daughter's behavior during the incident. By emphasizing the alleged threat perceived by the officers, they tried to justify the use of force as a necessary response to protect themselves and the public. This legal tug-of-war played out over weeks. The family of the victim watched from the gallery, their emotions oscillating between hope and despair. The father's military discipline kept him composed, but those close to him noticed the toll the trial took: sleepless nights, emotional fatigue, and moments of quiet anguish. Outside the courthouse, protests swelled. Community leaders, activists, and citizens demanded transparency and justice. The media spotlight was intense, and social media platforms buzzed with opinions, misinformation, and calls to action. The family's privacy was often invaded, and the father's military background became a focal point in news stories, sometimes overshadowing the daughter's experience. Political figures entered the conversation, some expressing support for police reform and accountability, while others warned against rushing to judgment before all facts were known. This heightened the already charged atmosphere surrounding the case. Back inside the courtroom, key witnesses were called. Some recounted the incident with vivid clarity, while others faltered under cross-examination. Conflicting testimonies created doubt and tension, leaving jurors to sift through layers of complexity. One pivotal moment came when a Bodycam video, previously withheld, was introduced. The footage contradicted earlier officer statements, showing moments of hesitation and confusion rather than clear threats. This revelation electrified the courtroom and shifted public sentiment further toward the prosecution's side. Legal experts debated the implications of this evidence. Did it prove recklessness? Was it enough to convict? The defense argued that real-time chaos made it impossible for officers to perfectly adhere to protocol. The jury, composed of diverse individuals from various backgrounds, found themselves grappling with these challenging questions. Their deliberations would be long and arduous, requiring them to balance legal standards with moral considerations. Meanwhile, the family continued their quiet fight for justice. The father leaned on his military values of honor and resilience, while the daughter worked with counselors to heal from trauma. They both became symbols of strength amid adversity. This segment of the story revealed the profound challenges inherent in the justice system, the clash of narratives, the influence of societal biases, and the personal toll on those seeking truth. As the trial unfolded, it became clear that this was more than a court case. It was a pivotal moment in the ongoing struggle for equality, accountability, and reform. The courtroom fell silent as the judge dismissed the lawyers, instructing the jury to begin their deliberations. Behind the heavy wooden doors, 12 individuals took their seats, carrying the weight of a decision that extended far beyond the case before them. Their task was daunting: to dissect mountains of testimony, analyze conflicting evidence, and reach a unanimous verdict that could redefine justice. Outside, the atmosphere was electric. News vans lined the streets. Protesters chanted slogans, demanding justice, and social media exploded with anticipation. The family's supporters gathered nearby, holding signs that read, "Justice for her," and "End police brutality." The father stood among them, calm but resolute, his military training manifesting in a steely focus and unwavering determination. Inside the jury room, the discussions began cautiously. Some jurors expressed sympathy for the officers, referencing the challenges law enforcement faces daily. Others questioned the justification for such extreme force against an unarmed young woman. The bodycam footage played repeatedly in their minds, a stark visual that challenged previous narratives. One juror, a retired schoolteacher, urged her peers to focus strictly on the facts presented and the law's standards. She emphasized the importance of impartiality in a case fraught with emotion and public pressure. The conversations grew intense over hours and days. Jurors debated the reasonableness of the officer's perception of threat, the sequence of events leading to the shooting, and the broader implications of systemic bias. Each piece of evidence was scrutinized, from forensic reports to expert analyses on police protocols. Meanwhile, the family faced a different battle. The spotlight had brought unwanted attention and invasive questions. The daughter's trauma was palpable, and the father, despite his strength, struggled privately with fears of an unjust outcome. Their support network rallied around them, providing counseling, legal advice, and emotional care. Public figures weighed in, amplifying the case's significance. Civil rights leaders called for reforms in policing, advocating for community oversight and better training on de-escalation. Law enforcement unions defended the officers, warning of the dangers posed by anti-police sentiments. The media's role was complex. Some outlets focused on sensational headlines, while others provided in-depth analysis, exploring the nuances of race, power, and justice intertwined in the case. This media landscape shaped public perception, influencing opinions nationwide. Back in the jury room, tensions peaked when a vote was taken. The split revealed deep divides, reflecting the polarized views held across society. Some jurors felt the evidence clearly indicated excessive force and racial bias. Others remained uncertain, concerned about setting a precedent that could undermine police authority. To break the deadlock, the judge ordered additional instructions clarifying legal Definitions of use of force and racial discrimination. Expert legal scholars were consulted remotely to assist jurors in understanding complex standards. The jurors returned to their deliberations with renewed focus, yet the divide lingered. Stories of past miscarriages of justice haunted some members, while others cited the need to protect law enforcement officers in dangerous situations. Throughout this period, the family's resilience was tested. They remained committed to the truth, attending court sessions daily and participating in community forums. Their story inspired nationwide conversations about policing, race relations, and the urgent need for change. As the trial drew toward its climax, the pressure on the jury intensified. They knew the verdict would resonate beyond the courthouse, impacting policy, community trust, and the very fabric of justice. This chapter underscored the profound complexities of jury deliberation in cases marked by racial tensions and high stakes. It highlighted the challenge of balancing empathy, law, and social context, a microcosm of the larger societal struggle for equality. Days passed with little word from the jury. The courthouse was a hive of nervous energy, reporters speculated endlessly, and the public anxiously awaited a verdict that could either heal or deepen divisions. Inside the jury room, 12 strangers wrestled with a decision that felt almost impossible, a decision that carried the weight of a nation's hopes and fears. The jurors, each with their own backgrounds and perspectives, knew that their verdict would either affirm justice or invite outrage. They reviewed evidence repeatedly: the Bodycam footage, witness testimonies, expert analysis, and the chilling silence of a young woman who couldn't fully explain what happened in those terrifying moments. Some jurors shared stories of their own experiences with law enforcement, stories of fear, trust, or betrayal. These personal histories colored the deliberations, making the process profoundly human and difficult. One juror revealed a past encounter where police saved their life. Another spoke candidly about encounters marked by racial profiling. Meanwhile, the defendant officers awaited the verdict under heavy scrutiny. Their families struggled to reconcile the man they knew with the public perception of guilt. Defense attorneys prepared for every possible outcome, aware that their clients' futures and reputations hung in the balance. The father, a decorated Delta Force veteran, balanced the role of protector and advocate. His public composure hid the turmoil beneath. Each day he met with lawyers, community leaders, and supporters, emphasizing peace but demanding accountability. Social movements surged, with protests turning into vigils and marches. Calls for police reform grew louder, echoing nationwide. Activists framed the trial as a symbol of systemic injustice, a fight not just for one family, but for many who had suffered similarly. In the courtroom, the judge prepared for the final phase, ensuring all procedures were followed and the jurors understood the gravity of their duty. The legal teams sharpened their arguments for closing statements, aiming to sway the jury in the final moments. When the jury finally emerged after long deliberation, their faces were grave. The courtroom filled with hushed whispers as they took their seats. The judge reminded everyone of the solemnity of the moment. The verdict could change lives forever. As the foreperson read the verdict slowly, tension gripped the room. Each word echoed through the silent crowd. The outcome, whether guilty or not guilty, promised consequences far beyond the walls of the court. This phase of the trial revealed not only the mechanics of justice, but the emotional resonance of truth, memory, and race in America. It showcased how one case can spark national debate, forcing a society to confront uncomfortable realities. The father's story, the daughter's trauma, the officer's fate, all converged in this moment of reckoning. The verdict was more than a legal determination. It was a mirror reflecting a country still grappling with its conscience. The courtroom emptied quickly after the verdict, but the ripple effects spread far beyond. Media outlets exploded with coverage, social media platforms erupted with heated debates, and communities across the country reacted with a mix of relief, outrage, disbelief, and hope. For the father, the verdict was a bittersweet moment. No matter the legal outcome, nothing could undo the pain inflicted upon his family. His daughter's trauma was a wound that would take years to heal, and the scars left on their lives were deep and permanent. As he spoke to reporters, his voice steady yet laden with emotion, he urged unity and understanding. Justice is more than a verdict, he said. It's about rebuilding trust. It's about ensuring this never happens again. At the same time, the defendant officers faced intense public scrutiny. Some hailed the verdict as a victory for law enforcement, while others saw it as a miscarriage of justice. Their careers, reputations, and personal lives would never be the same. Some faced internal investigations, others were suspended, and the legal battle was far from over. Community leaders called for calm but demanded continued reform. The trial had become a catalyst for renewed focus on police accountability, implicit bias training, and changes in law enforcement protocols nationwide. Many saw the verdict as a starting point, not an end. Protests flared in major cities, peaceful marches intertwined with clashes between demonstrators and police. The nation seemed to be at a crossroads, struggling to reconcile the ideals of justice with the realities of systemic inequalities. In homes, conversations about race, privilege, and policing became more frequent and intense. Schools, workplaces, and families grappled with how to discuss a case that had captured the country's attention and divided opinions. Experts weighed in on the case's broader implications. Legal analysts discussed precedent, civil rights attorneys examined potential for further litigation, and sociologists explored the impact on community police relations. Meanwhile, the father quietly worked behind the scenes. Beyond public statements, he engaged with advocacy groups, lawmakers, and activists. Drawing on his military background, he pushed for training reforms that emphasized de-escalation and respect for civil rights. The daughter's journey to recovery was challenging. She began therapy, supported by a network of family and professionals, dedicated to healing trauma caused by violence and fear. Her story became a powerful testament to resilience amid adversity. In the political arena, elected officials used the case to highlight the urgent need for comprehensive police reform legislation. Proposals included increased transparency, use of force, limits, and community oversight boards. The trial also inspired a wave of citizen journalism and bodycam advocacy. More people demanded that police interactions be recorded to protect both officers and civilians. Technology companies began exploring innovations to improve accountability tools. The case left an indelible mark on the cultural landscape. Filmmakers, writers, and artists created works reflecting on justice, race, and family. It sparked dialogues that crossed ideological lines, challenging assumptions and fostering empathy. Above all, the story remained a human one. A father's fierce love for his daughter, a community's cry for justice, and a nation's struggle to live up to its promises. With the nation watching, the family's fight moved decisively into the courtroom. What had started as a viral video sparked by outrage was now a high-stakes legal battle demanding accountability. The courtroom was not just a venue for facts and arguments. It became a battleground of ideals, where the family's quest for justice clashed with the formidable machinery of law enforcement and institutional protection. The father, now a public figure and symbol of resilience, prepared to face a complex legal system that often seemed designed to shield those in power rather than to serve the truth. His team of lawyers worked tirelessly, sifting through evidence, eyewitness accounts, and expert testimonies. Every detail mattered. The angles of the video, the timelines of events, the inconsistencies in official reports. The prosecution laid out a compelling case, presenting the video as undeniable proof of excessive force and racial bias. They called witnesses who described the emotional toll on the family, the fear in the community, and the urgent need for reform. Experts in use of force policies dissected the officers' actions, highlighting deviations from standard procedures. The defense, however, mounted a robust counterattack. They argued that the officer acted within the bounds of the law, citing perceived threats and procedural justifications. Attempts were made to question the credibility of witnesses and to frame the incident as an unfortunate but isolated event. Legal jargon and technicalities threatened to obscure the human story at the heart of the case. Throughout the trial, media coverage was intense. Headlines reflected the polarized reactions. Some hailed the family's courage, others questioned the narrative. Social media amplified both support and criticism, creating a charged atmosphere outside the courtroom doors. The daughter's testimony was particularly powerful. Despite the trauma, she recounted the incident with clarity and honesty, her voice conveying pain, fear, and hope. Her words humanized the statistics and legal arguments, reminding all present that this was about real lives forever altered. The father's own testimony combined his military precision with heartfelt emotion. He spoke not only of the incident itself, but of the broader implications, how systemic failures in law enforcement endangered communities, perpetuated racial injustice, and eroded trust. His perspective as a trained soldier added weight, demonstrating the disconnect between disciplined service and the chaos of that day. Legal experts closely analyzed the case, predicting outcomes and implications for future policing policies. The courtroom drama underscored the challenges faced by victims seeking justice in cases involving police misconduct. Issues of qualified immunity, evidentiary standards, and procedural delays came under scrutiny. Community leaders and activists rallied outside the courthouse. Vigils, marches, and peaceful demonstrations expressed solidarity and demanded transparency. Their presence underscored that the trial was not just about one family, but about the urgent need to confront systemic racism and abuse of power nationwide. Behind the scenes, settlement negotiations and legal maneuvers created tension. The family grappled with the emotional weight of the process, balancing the desire for justice with the toll of prolonged legal battles. Their support network, friends, advocates, counselors, played a critical role in sustaining their resolve. As the trial progressed, public opinion shifted. Awareness grew about the broader patterns of misconduct, the importance of body cameras, independent oversight, and community policing reforms. The family story became a catalyst for legislative discussions, influencing policymakers at local, and national levels. Ultimately, the courtroom would deliver a verdict that resonated far beyond the legal realm. Regardless of the outcome, the trial had already succeeded in shining a harsh light on issues that too often remained hidden. It sparked a national reckoning, pushing communities and institutions to confront uncomfortable truths. The family, though, scarred by the experience, emerged as voices of hope and change. Their journey was a testament to the power of resilience and the enduring quest for justice. They reminded the world that even in the darkest moments, standing up for what is right can inspire transformation. In the weeks following the verdict, the family began the slow, often painful process of healing. The daughter, still haunted by the trauma of that fateful day, faced each new sunrise with a courage that surprised even those closest to her. Therapy sessions, once met with hesitation, gradually became a safe space where she could voice fears and frustrations that had long been silenced. Her father, a man forged in the crucible of military discipline and combat, found himself navigating a new battlefield, the complex landscape of emotional recovery and public advocacy. His resolve, unshaken in war zones abroad, was now tested in ways he had never imagined. Protecting his daughter meant not only confronting the system that had failed them, but also learning how to be vulnerable in a society still grappling with deep divides. Together, they started building bridges, connecting with support groups, community leaders, and other families who had suffered similar injustices. These gatherings became a source of strength, transforming individual pain into collective power. Stories were shared, tears were shed, and slowly, hope began to sprout from the ashes of heartbreak. At the same time, the father dedicated himself to advocacy work, using his platform as a military veteran to speak on panels, participate in forums, and advise policymakers. His unique perspective, combining tactical precision with personal experience, made him a compelling voice for reform. He stressed the importance of comprehensive training for law enforcement, emphasizing de-escalation techniques, cultural competence, and the need for accountability at every level. His message resonated widely, sparking conversations in city halls, congressional offices, and grassroots organizations. Legislators introduced bills inspired by the case, aiming to overhaul policing standards and increase transparency. While progress was slow and met with resistance, momentum was undeniable. Meanwhile, the community that had rallied around the family continued to organize. Neighborhood watch programs, youth engagement initiatives, and dialogue circles emerged, fostering a spirit of collaboration between residents and local law enforcement. These efforts sought to mend frayed relationships and build trust from the ground up. The national conversation also broadened. Media outlets dedicated investigative series to examining patterns of racial bias in policing. Documentaries explored the human toll of systemic injustice. Universities hosted symposiums addressing racial equity and social justice. For many, the case symbolized a turning point, a catalyst for reflection and action. It challenged individuals and institutions to confront uncomfortable truths and commit to meaningful change. However, the road ahead remained daunting. Healing, both personal and societal, required patience, empathy, and sustained effort. Old wounds were slow to close, and setbacks were inevitable. The daughter's journey, though filled with progress, was marked by moments of fear and anger. Flashbacks haunted her sleep, and public attention sometimes felt overwhelming, yet surrounded. By love and supported by professional care, she gradually reclaimed her sense of self. Her father continued to balance advocacy with family life, navigating the demands of public engagement while nurturing the bonds that grounded him. Their story became a beacon for others, a testament to resilience, love, and the enduring pursuit of justice. As the nation watched, the legacy of this case unfolded, not merely in legislation or headlines, but in the hearts and minds of those committed to building a more equitable future. The courtroom drama was only one chapter in a much larger story, a story about healing, societal reckoning, and the long, difficult path toward meaningful change. As the trial drew attention, so did the ripple effects across the community, the police force, and even the nation's consciousness. But what happens after the verdict? What does justice truly look like when the gavel falls silent? For the family, healing was both a personal and public journey. The father's military discipline helped him maintain strength, but the wounds, emotional, physical, and psychological, were deep. Their daughter's trauma lingered, compounded by media scrutiny and public debate. Therapy sessions, support, groups, and moments of vulnerability all became part of their daily reality. The family story resonated widely, sparking conversations in homes, schools, and workplaces. It forced people to confront uncomfortable questions about race, privilege, and the use of force by those sworn to protect. For some, it was a wake-up call. For others, a confirmation of what they had long known but felt powerless to address. Community. Organizations seized the moment to push for reforms. Calls for independent police oversight, mandatory de-escalation training, and greater transparency gained momentum. Activists organized forums and workshops to educate citizens on their rights and ways to advocate for change. The narrative shifted from a single incident to a systemic issue demanding systemic solutions. Within the police department, the case provoked intense soul-searching. Some officers embraced the opportunity to improve, participating in new training programs focused on bias awareness and crisis intervention. Others resisted, feeling unfairly targeted or misunderstood. The leadership faced pressure from multiple fronts: community demands, political scrutiny, and the need to maintain morale within the ranks. Body camera policies were revisited, with increased funding allocated to ensure consistent use and secure storage of footage. Transparency initiatives aim to rebuild trust between law enforcement and the communities they serve. Yet, progress was uneven, and skepticism persisted. The gap between promise and practice remained a significant hurdle. Legislators responded, with proposals aimed at curbing police violence and enhancing accountability. Bills addressing qualified immunity, use of force standards, and community engagement were introduced in state houses and Congress. The family's case became a touchstone in these debates, humanizing abstract policy discussions with their lived experience. Media outlets continued to follow the family's journey, documenting the long-term impact of trauma and the challenges of navigating justice. Documentaries, interviews, and opinion pieces explored broader themes of systemic racism and reform. Public figures weighed in, using their platforms to amplify calls for change. Education systems also began to incorporate lessons from the case into curricula, emphasizing social justice, empathy, and civic responsibility. Youth programs aimed to empower the next generation to engage critically with issues of race and policing. Schools hosted dialogues that were sometimes difficult, but ultimately transformative. On a personal level, the family found strength in advocacy. They became vocal champions for reform, speaking at rallies, participating in panels, and working with non-profits. Their courage inspired others who had suffered similar injustices to come forward, creating a growing movement for change. The father's background as a Delta Force commander added a unique perspective to these efforts. His military experience underscored the importance of discipline, integrity, and accountability, values he believed law enforcement should embody. His voice bridged communities often seen as separate, offering insights into leadership and resilience. Tada's daughter's story, marked by trauma but also hope, became a symbol of survival. She advocated for mental health awareness and support services for victims of police violence. Her journey highlighted the often overlooked human cost behind headlines and statistics. As the community grappled with these realities, relationships were tested and rebuilt. Healing was a collective process, requiring honesty, humility, and sustained effort. Initiatives promoting dialogue between residents and police sought to foster understanding and collaboration. Despite setbacks and ongoing challenges, the family's ordeal sparked tangible progress. Policies evolved, attitudes shifted, and awareness deepened. The case reminded the nation that justice is not just about punishment, but about transformation of individuals, institutions, and society at large. The path forward remained long and complex, but the family's unwavering commitment to truth and justice provided a beacon of hope. Their story was a testament to the power of resilience and the enduring human spirit in the face of adversity. The trial of the racist cop who shot an unarmed young woman was not just a singular event in a courtroom. It became a catalyst for broader change, igniting a national conversation that reverberated through legislative halls, police departments, and everyday conversations across the country. The family's story had entered the public consciousness and refused to leave quietly. It forced a reckoning not only with the immediate injustice, but with the deep-rooted systemic issues that made such tragedies possible. In the months following the verdict, lawmakers at multiple levels stepped into action. The case had exposed glaring gaps in police accountability, especially in how officers were trained and how use-of-force incidents were investigated. Some states moved quickly to introduce bills that would require mandatory body cameras, independent investigations into police shootings, and clearer use-of-force guidelines. Among the most significant legislative pushes was the introduction of a federal bill aimed at ending qualified immunity, a legal doctrine that had long shielded officers from civil lawsuits. The bill proposed to make it easier for victims of police misconduct to seek justice and hold officers accountable. Although the bill faced strong opposition from police unions and some political groups, public support was growing rapidly. Grassroots organizations amplified these efforts, organizing protests, educational campaigns, and voter registration drives. The family, once thrust unwillingly into the spotlight, embraced their new roles as activists and advocates. They partnered with civil rights groups and community leaders, sharing their story to highlight the urgent need for reform. Their raw honesty and courage helped humanize the abstract issues of police reform and racial justice. Public opinion began to shift as well. Polls showed increasing awareness and concern over police violence and systemic racism. Discussions about race and policing, once confined to activist circles, entered mainstream media and family dinners alike. The case was cited in national speeches and presidential debates, underscoring its wide-reaching impact. Police departments across the nation faced growing pressure to change. Some departments proactively revised their training protocols, incorporating bias recognition, de-escalation techniques, and community engagement practices. Others resisted, citing tradition and concerns over officer safety. Still, the tide was undeniable. Communities demanded better, safer policing. In many cities, community oversight boards gained new powers and funding, allowing for greater transparency and influence over local law enforcement. These boards, often composed of residents and experts, became crucial in rebuilding trust. They provided a platform for residents to voice concerns and helped ensure police accountability. The technological aspect of policing also evolved. The use of body cameras expanded rapidly, though challenges remained in managing and accessing footage. New tools for real-time monitoring and data analysis promised to identify patterns of misconduct earlier. However, questions about privacy and misuse sparked important debates. Media coverage remained intense and often critical. Documentaries and investigative journalism pieces uncovered other cases of police misconduct, linking them to systemic failures. The family's case became emblematic of a nationwide problem, prompting calls for comprehensive reform. Educational institutions responded by integrating social justice themes into their curricula. Students learned about civil rights history, alongside contemporary issues of policing and race. This fostered greater empathy and a more informed generation ready to engage with these complex topics. Meanwhile, cultural conversations deepened. Art, literature, and music reflected the zeitgeist of change and resistance. The family's story inspired films, books, and plays that explored themes of justice, resilience, and redemption. At the same time, the psychological toll on those involved was immense. The family continued therapy and counseling, grappling with trauma while striving to find meaning in their experience. They became advocates not just for legal reform, but also for mental health support for victims of police violence and their communities. The father's military background gave him a unique voice in the debate. He often spoke about leadership, responsibility, and the importance of ethical conduct, values he believed should be at the core of policing. His perspective bridged divides, fostering dialogue between veterans, law enforcement, and civil rights activists. For the daughter, reclaiming her narrative was vital. She participated in programs for youth empowerment, encouraging others to speak out against injustice. Her journey from victim to advocate highlighted the potential for healing and transformation. The case's impact was felt even beyond the United States. International human rights organizations cited it as a clear example of systemic racism and police brutality. Global protests echoed the demands for accountability and reform. Despite these strides, challenges persisted. The path to justice remained, fraught with obstacles, political resistance, and deeply entrenched biases. The family and their supporters knew that meaningful change would require sustained effort and vigilance. Nevertheless, their story served as a beacon of hope. It reminded the nation that individual courage, combined with collective action, could drive progress. The legacy of this case was still unfolding, shaping laws, policies, and hearts for years to come. In the wake of the trial and the nationwide uproar, the family faced a new chapter filled with both hope and hardship. Justice had been served in the courtroom, but healing was an ongoing process, one that tested their resilience, their faith, and their commitment to making a difference. The daughter, whose life had been forever changed by the shooting, found herself at the center of a movement. Despite her trauma, she embraced a powerful role as a symbol of strength and perseverance. Public speaking engagements, interviews, and community forums became part of her routine. Each time she shared her story, she inspired others to stand up against injustice and demand accountability. But the emotional toll was undeniable. Nightmares and flashbacks haunted her nights, while moments of anxiety and fear lingered during the day. The trauma extended beyond physical injury. It struck at the very core of her identity and trust in society. Therapy and counseling became crucial lifelines. With professional help, she began the long journey toward reclaiming her sense of safety and self-worth. Her father, too, faced challenges. Known as a lethal Delta Force commander, his military career had instilled discipline and strength, yet even he grappled with feelings of helplessness and anger when confronted with the violence inflicted upon his daughter. Balancing the role of protector, advocate, and grieving parent required immense emotional fortitude. His military background became both a source of strength and complexity. On one hand, it gave him a platform to speak with authority on leadership, responsibility, and accountability. On the other, it made his vulnerability more visible, showing that even the strongest among us are not immune to the consequences of systemic failures. Together, the family leaned on each other and their community for support. Friends, activists, and neighbors rallied around them, offering assistance, encouragement, and solidarity. Fundraisers helped cover medical expenses and legal fees, easing some of the financial strain that had accompanied the case. Yet healing was not just personal. It was communal. The local neighborhood, deeply shaken by the incident, embarked on its own path to recovery. Town hall meetings brought residents together to discuss concerns and propose solutions. Community policing initiatives sought to rebuild trust between law enforcement and citizens. Educational workshops focused on race, bias, and conflict resolution. The family actively participated in these efforts, understanding that lasting change required grassroots involvement. They worked with local leaders to establish programs for youth engagement, emphasizing the importance of dialogue, empathy, and empowerment. As the national spotlight dimmed, their work continued quietly but persistently. They knew that awareness was just the first step. Systemic change demanded vigilance, education, and the courage to confront uncomfortable truths. The daughter returned to school, determined to pursue her dreams despite the shadows of her experience. Her academic journey became a testament to resilience, showing that trauma did not define her future. She engaged in activism on campus, connecting with peers and professors who shared her passion for justice. Meanwhile, the father's advocacy expanded. He spoke at veteran organizations, police academies, and legislative hearings, bridging diverse communities. His message emphasized that true service included protecting civil rights and upholding the dignity of every citizen. Together, they authored a memoir detailing their journey from tragedy to triumph. The book resonated widely, offering insight into the human cost of police violence and the power of hope. It became a resource for educators, activists, and policymakers alike. Despite progress, obstacles remained. The family faced backlash and threats from extremist groups resistant to change. They navigated a landscape of political division, misinformation, and ongoing debates about race and policing. Their commitment to truth and justice was tested repeatedly, yet their resolve never wavered. The lessons learned from pain and perseverance fueled their determination to make a meaningful difference. They founded a non-profit organization focused on police reform, community healing, and youth empowerment. The organization provided resources, training, and support to those affected by similar tragedies. The ripple effects of their story influenced a new generation of leaders and activists. Inspired by their courage, young people mobilized, organizing campaigns for reform and social justice. Their voices grew louder, demanding accountability and equality. In the broader landscape, law enforcement agencies began adopting more progressive policies, influenced in part by the family's advocacy. Training on implicit bias, de-escalation, and community engagement became standard in many precincts. Some departments instituted mental health support for officers and the communities they served. National conversations about race, justice, and equity deepened. Media coverage became more nuanced, highlighting stories of resilience alongside calls for systemic reform. Educational curricula incorporated more comprehensive studies of civil rights history and contemporary challenges. As years passed, the family witnessed tangible improvements while remaining mindful of the work ahead. Their experience had transformed them into leaders, educators, and advocates, a testament to the enduring human spirit. Their story was a reminder that healing is possible, even in the face of unimaginable adversity. It underscored the importance of truth, accountability, and community in building a more just society. As the dust settled years after the initial tragedy, the family began to reflect deeply on the legacy their experience had created. What started as a heartbreaking incident spiraled into a movement that reshaped how communities, law enforcement, and policymakers approached justice and accountability. The daughter, now a young woman with a voice recognized across the nation, embodied the resilience that had inspired millions. She often spoke about the importance of transforming pain into purpose. Her speeches weren't just recounts of trauma, they were calls to action, encouragement to those struggling, and reminders that change starts with individuals who refuse to remain silent. Her advocacy led her to pursue higher education in social justice and public policy. She sought to understand the systems that had failed her and others like her, with the goal of becoming a policymaker who could influence legislation from within. Her work in university included research on policing reform, community engagement, and restorative justice models, bridging academic rigor with lived experience. Her father's military past evolved into a new mission. He shifted from a role defined by command and combat to one rooted in mentorship and education. He traveled extensively, speaking at military academies and veteran groups about the parallels between battlefield leadership and civilian responsibility. His message stressed that strength without compassion leads nowhere, and that protecting the rights and dignity of all people is the ultimate duty. Together, their non-profit organization flourished, It became a beacon for families affected by police violence, providing legal aid, counseling, and community outreach programs. The organization hosted annual conferences that brought together activists, survivors, law enforcement representatives, and scholars to foster dialogue and strategize on reform. Their initiatives included training programs for police officers designed to humanize encounters and build empathy. These programs incorporated stories from survivors and family members, creating powerful first-hand accounts that changed perspectives. Early results showed promising reductions in use of force incidents and improved community trust. The families' influence extended beyond national borders. International human rights groups invited them to share their story and best practices. Their experience became a case study in balancing accountability with healing, proving that even the most painful chapters can lead to constructive outcomes. Media portrayals of their story evolved as well. Documentaries, podcasts, and feature articles highlighted their journey, offering nuanced insights rather than sensational headlines. This media shift contributed to a broader cultural reckoning with systemic racism and police brutality. Educational institutions incorporated their story into curricula on civil rights, ethics, and social activism. Students engaged critically with the complexities of justice, policing, and community healing, fostering a generation more aware and involved. Yet, the family remained grounded. They understood that their experience, while unique, was part of a larger struggle that required ongoing commitment. They continued to emphasize that no victory is final and that vigilance is necessary to safeguard hard-won gains. Personal reflection became a vital part of their journey. They grappled with the weight of their public roles and the ongoing trauma beneath the surface. Support networks, therapy, and close relationships helped them navigate these challenges. At times they encountered criticism and opposition, but they met it with grace and determination. Their authenticity and transparency garnered respect, even from skeptics. The father found solace in mentoring younger veterans who faced their own battles, both visible and invisible. He encouraged them to channel their skills into community service and activism, creating a ripple effect of positive influence. The daughter's path led her into politics, where she campaigned for criminal justice reform and equitable community investment. Her platform focused on prevention, education, and rehabilitation, aiming to dismantle the cycles that had trapped so many. Together, they remained symbols of what is possible when courage meets conviction. Their story proved that one family's fight for justice could ignite a nationwide movement with lasting impact. Their legacy is not only measured by changes in law or policy, but by the hearts and minds they touched. They inspired countless individuals to stand up, speak out, and work toward a more just society. In moments of quiet reflection, they acknowledged the profound cost of their journey, the pain, loss, and sacrifice. But they also recognized the transformative power of hope, unity, and unwavering dedication. Their story is a reminder that justice is not a destination, but a continuous pursuit. It challenges each of us to examine our roles and responsibilities in creating communities where every life is valued and protected. As they looked to the future, the family remained committed to their mission, honoring the past by building a better tomorrow. Their journey continues to inspire and guide those who dare to dream of a fairer world. The years since that tragic day have been a tapestry of sorrow, struggle, triumph, and transformation. The story that began with a shooting that shocked a community and ignited a national conversation has evolved into a powerful testament to resilience and change. In this final chapter, we explore the enduring hope, healing, and the road ahead for the family, their community, and the nation. The daughter, once a frightened teenager caught in a violent moment, now stands as a beacon of strength and leadership. Her journey from trauma to advocacy has shaped her into a compelling voice for justice. She travels widely, sharing her story with audiences that span from local school assemblies to global conferences on human rights. Through her words, she fosters understanding, empathy, and a call to action. Her efforts are not without challenges, navigating the complexities of activism while maintaining personal well-being requires continuous balance. She speaks openly about the importance of mental health care, encouraging others to seek support and build strong networks. Her honesty breaks down stigmas and empowers many survivors to reclaim their narratives. The father's legacy as a military commander now intertwines with his role as a community protector and mentor. He dedicates himself to bridging gaps between law enforcement and the public, believing that true security arises from mutual respect and accountability. His workshops and seminars, informed by both battlefield experience and personal loss, resonate deeply with diverse audiences. Together, their non-profit organization remains a vital force for change. It expands its reach, launching programs aimed at youth empowerment, conflict resolution, and restorative justice practices. By fostering dialogue and cooperation among stakeholders, community members, police, policymakers, they work to prevent future tragedies and build safer, more inclusive neighborhoods. The family's story continues to influence legislation. Laws passed in the wake of their case improve police training, enhance transparency, and increase support for victims' families. Their advocacy helps secure funding for independent oversight bodies and mental health crisis teams. Recognizing that policing is a shared societal responsibility, community healing is a gradual process, and setbacks sometimes occur. However, sustained efforts in education, engagement, and empathy have transformed many relationships. Neighborhoods once marked by distrust are now cultivating partnerships that celebrate diversity and prioritize justice. Media portrayals of their story have matured, moving beyond sensationalism to thoughtful analysis and humanization. Documentaries and books delve into systemic issues while highlighting individual courage. This nuanced coverage shapes public discourse, fostering more informed and compassionate perspectives. The daughter's political career gains momentum. She champions policies that address the root causes of violence and inequality, advocating for investment in education, housing, and healthcare. Her leadership exemplifies the power of lived experience to inform effective governance. The father continues to inspire military veterans to serve their communities in new ways. He mentors those transitioning to civilian life, encouraging them to apply their skills toward social betterment and civic engagement. As the family reflects on their journey, they acknowledge the profound impact their fight has had, not only on their lives, but on the fabric of society. They honor the memory of those lost and the countless others affected by systemic injustice, pledging to carry forward the work until true equity is achieved. Their story teaches us that hope can emerge From heartbreak and healing is possible even in the face of unimaginable pain. It challenges us all to confront uncomfortable truths, to listen to marginalized voices, and to act with courage and compassion. The road ahead remains long and uncertain, but the foundation laid by their struggle provides a beacon. It lights the way for future generations committed to justice, dignity, and peace. In the end, this story is not just about a family or an incident. It is about a nation's reckoning, a community's resilience, and the enduring human spirit that refuses to be broken. The final chapter is not an end, but a beginning. A call to continue the journey toward a world where every life is respected, every voice heard, and every person safe. The night started like any other, but it would soon spiral into chaos, a moment caught on camera that would ignite a firestorm of outrage, debate, and reveal a hidden truth nobody expected. This is the story of how a routine police encounter escalated into a deadly shooting, changing lives forever. It's about a black man's daughter, unarmed, caught in a terrifying moment of violence. But the real twist, her father was no ordinary civilian. Unbeknownst to anyone, he was a lethal Delta Force commander, a warrior with skills and secrets that would soon come to light in the most dramatic way possible. The viral video that captured the shooting shocked millions across social media. Viewers were horrified by the graphic nature of the event and enraged by the clear signs of racial bias displayed by the officers involved. Questions flooded in. Why was deadly force used against an unarmed young woman? How did this situation escalate so quickly? And most importantly, what would justice look like in this case? To understand this story, we need to start from the beginning. Who was the young woman at the center of this storm? What led to the police being called? And how did her father's military past play a critical role in the aftermath? Our story takes us deep into the heart of a community grappling with trauma and mistrust. The daughter, a bright and promising young woman, was going about her life when everything changed in an instant. The police officers who confronted her were tasked with protecting the public, but their actions raised questions about the very nature of that protection. The incident exposed systemic issues that have plagued law enforcement for decades, especially in minority communities. But as the video spread and the investigation unfolded, another story emerged. One that the public had never seen before. A story of a man whose life had been forged in the harshest battles imaginable. A man who had sworn to protect his country with his life, and a man who would now have to use every bit of that training to protect his family and fight for justice. This isn't just a story about police violence. It's about the clash between authority and accountability, about the power of hidden truths, and the fight to make a difference in a broken system. It's about a father's love and his deadly resolve to ensure his daughter's story is heard. As the investigation heats up and the courtroom drama begins, tensions rise on all sides. Supporters rally, protests erupt, and the nation watches closely. But beneath the headlines lies a deeper narrative, one that challenges us all to rethink what justice really means. Stay with us as we unravel this incredible tale. You'll hear from witnesses, experts, and those closest to the family. You'll get an inside look at the military background that few knew existed and discover how it shapes the fight ahead. But be warned, this story is far from over. The Shocking truth about what really happened that night is just beginning to surface, and the consequences will be felt for years to come. The night the world seemed to shatter around her was, for her, just another ordinary evening, one she had spent in the familiar rhythm of youth, juggling studies, friends, and the daily challenges of life. She was a bright spark in her community, known for her kindness, her intelligence, and a quiet strength that had been nurtured by her family's legacy. Though many outside her circle would never guess it, she carried with her the echoes of a father's discipline, a father whose life was forged in the harsh crucible of the military's most elite ranks. A Delta Force commander. But that night, none of that mattered. Before the chaos, she had plans. She was a student, passionate about her field of study, with dreams of making a difference beyond the walls of her campus. She volunteered, she connected with people, she envisioned a future, full of promise. She was loved and respected, a daughter proud of her heritage, yet unaware how quickly her world could change. The trigger for the events that would upend everything was, on the surface, mundane. An anonymous call from a neighbor, a report of suspicious activity, or perhaps a simple misunderstanding blown out of proportion. What followed was a stark reminder of the fragility of trust, the dangerous power of fear, and the devastating consequences of prejudice. The police arrived, their presence filling the air with tension. The daughter's calm demeanor did little to quell the officers' suspicions. There was an air of accusation in their stance, an underlying readiness to escalate rather than de-escalate. They approached with a harshness that betrayed their assumptions before any words were exchanged. Eyewitness accounts paint a chilling picture. The daughter stood alone, unarmed, hands raised in an attempt to show she meant no harm. Yet the officers' reactions were swift and disproportionate. Voices raised, commands barked, her pleas lost in a flood of noise and aggression. What could have been a peaceful resolution spiraled quickly into chaos. The viral video that captured these moments is haunting. Grainy footage, shot by bystanders who could barely believe what they were seeing, shows a confrontation turning violent within seconds. There is shouting, a struggle, and then the unmistakable sound of gunfire. The daughter collapses. Panic erupts. The camera shakes, the crowd gasps, and the scene becomes a symbol of a larger struggle that would grip the nation. As the video spread, so did the outrage. Social media platforms exploded with demands for justice, with stories of pain, shared by those who saw their own experiences reflected in the tragedy. The daughter, once a private individual, became the face of a movement against racial injustice and police brutality. Behind the headlines and hashtags was a family shattered but unbroken. Her father, a man who had faced life-and-death situations on foreign battlefields, now faced a different kind of fight. The personal pain was unimaginable. His daughter, his flesh and blood, injured by those sworn to protect. Yet his military training instilled in him a resilience and resolve. He knew the path ahead would be difficult, filled with legal battles, media scrutiny and public pressure, but he was ready. This was not a man to stand silently by. Beneath the grief was a fierce determination to seek truth, accountability, and change. The stakes were no longer just about personal loss. They became a fight for justice and for the countless others who had suffered in silence. The unfolding story delves deep into the complex web of police protocols, systemic bias, and The intersection of race and law enforcement. It challenges the assumptions society makes about identity and capability, revealing the stark contrasts between appearances and realities. The father, whose lethal skills were honed in the shadows of covert operations, had been invisible to those who judged by color alone. Now his story and his daughter's would force a reckoning.